Do you believe a normal infantry regiment could be powerful enough to turn the tide of an entire war? In Warhammer 40k, that name isn't Astartes or Inquisitor. It's the Cadian Shock Troopers. Iron discipline, machine-like marksmanship, and the willingness to die just to hold a single trench line. Today, we'll dive inside the deadliest regiment of the Imperium to understand why every enemy trembles at the sound of two words, Cadian. If you've ever wondered what turns a frontier world into the most infamous infantry forge in the Imperium, the answer lies in cadia, the gateway to the Eye of Terror. From childhood, Cadians learn to identify firing arcs the way other children learn their multiplication tables. In Cadian culture, there's no divide between civilian and soldier. Everyone is a guardsman in waiting, ready for the rally horn to sound. Living on the brink of the warp's madness, they carry one creed in their hearts: stand firm, hold the line, never retreat, no matter what stands before you. Life on Cadia revolves around the training grounds. Teenagers are introduced early to formation discipline, Vox signals, how to swap a lasgun's power pack during a magnetic storm, and how to stay calm when facing the symbols of chaos. It's no wonder outsiders call the Cadian Shock Troopers machine infantry, but the Cadians themselves say, "We're not emotionless. We have purpose." That purpose is brutally simple: hold the line so the rest of the galaxy can see another dawn. In terms of organization, the Cadian Shock Troopers are the refined version of the Astra Militarum, tightly structured platoons, officers forged through fire, and NCOs as the backbone. Every heavy weapons team, every loader, every Vox operator understands they are a cog in the war machine. There are no lone heroes, only squads in sync, striking first, maintaining rhythm, and coordinating with artillery. That's how the Cadians turned the ordinary into extraordinary firepower. Before the fall, Cadia was an impenetrable fortress world. After the fall, when the planet itself shattered under Abaddon's assault, many thought the Cadian standard would die with it. But the truth defied that expectation. Cadia fell, yet the Cadians still stand. They became a diaspora scattered across the galaxy, carrying with them the one thing that mattered most: unbreakable discipline. That's why, on any front line, when command needs a unit to lock down a defensive sector, the Vox call echoes the same name: Cadian. Their combat doctrine rests on three pillars. First, standardization. From sandbag placement to reload commands, everything is streamlined into instinctive procedure. Second, concentrated firepower. A Cadian platoon rarely fires scattershot. They align firing lanes, weave interlocking fire nets, and slice through enemy advances with mathematical precision. Third, organized calm. When chaos erupts, Cadians don't shout orders. They execute their drills as naturally as breathing. These three pillars let them survive what would make ordinary men turn and run. That doesn't mean Cadians are cold. In the trenches, under shell fire, they still share stories from home, split rations, and tape family photos inside their helmets. The difference is this: they channel emotion into the right place, into the resolve not to let the enemy pass over their corpses. That's how Cadia forges steel, and why the name Cadian Shock Troopers makes even the servants of chaos hesitate. When the Cadians say discipline is a weapon, they don't speak metaphorically. Picture a standard defensive line. The outer layer is firing pits and obstacles. Behind them, a supply trench, heavy bolters on elevated positions, and between each point, a web of Vox chatter repeating terse commands: check, hold, fire. In that setting, Cadian Shock Troopers fear running out of rhythm more than running out of ammo. Firing rhythm, reload rhythm, movement rhythm. If even one link falls out of sync, the entire line can collapse. Delving into training, Cadian recruits learn the combat triad as instinct. First, positioning. Rather than fixating on the target, they learn to read the battlefield: wind direction, enemy muzzle flashes, choke points for fire placement. Second, coordination. Platoon leaders rarely shout long commands. They use 2 to 3 syllable trigger phrases that initiate entire procedures. Anchor, hold the line. Scour, clear blind spots. Lace, weave overlapping fire nets. Third, target lock. They don't shoot because they want to shoot, but because the target is locked. The last gun may be mocked for its low power, but in Cadian hands, 100 weak beams form an impenetrable wall of light. After the fall, the creed stand firm evolved into stand anywhere. Hold the line wherever the Imperium needs. Reconstituted regiments on foreign worlds still follow the Cadian standard. building an outpost in under 30 minutes, performing Vox-blind drills, maintaining fire rhythm without comms through hand signs and synchronized watches. This adaptability explains why Astra Militarum commanders prioritize Cadians for critical campaigns. They don't just defend, they orchestrate chaos to shatter enemy momentum. Then there's the backbone of every formation, the NCO. In Cadian ranks, a non-commissioned officer isn't a bureaucratic middle layer, but the keeper of the tactical rhythm. When an officer falls, the NCO grabs the Vox, repeats the order, reallocates ammo, and shifts firing positions 5 to 10 meters to avoid being counter-targeted. That ability isn't talent, it's the product of endless commander-down drills, where the platoon must complete objectives relying solely on ingrained procedures. What's fascinating is that Cadian discipline doesn't suffocate creativity. Each squad has its own small margin of freedom. Gunners modify las guns for stable fire rates in extreme weather. Loaders keep micronotes on friendly artillery's drop rhythm to time overlapping barrages. Vox teams invent localized ciphers for long deployments. These small innovations accumulate into decisive advantages. And finally, motivation. Outsiders often ask, how don't they break when facing daemons? Cadians won't talk about glory. They'll talk about duty. Duty to the rear line, to the countless souls who will never hold a gun. When you carry that kind of duty, you don't have to be brave all the time. You just have to stand one more minute. One more minute. And those countless minutes linked together are how the Cadian Shock Troopers earned their title, the deadliest infantry regiment the Imperium can trust. To understand why the Cadian Shock Troopers are considered the deadliest infantry regiment in the Imperium, we must begin with the simplest thing, the las gun. This supposedly weak weapon becomes a wall of light in Cadian hands. Why? Because they almost never fire alone. A Cadian platoon layers its fire nets. The front line fires short bursts to pin. The second line fires longer bursts to cut the enemy's advance, while the flanking gun points stitch through the sides. Their shooting is rarely random. Each volley is paced, like a military drumline, steady, fierce, deliberate. When the enemy stumbles into the kill zone, the NCO calls out a 2-syllable code, lace, and instantly, all 3 lines weave beams into a funnel of death. Above the lasgun wall lies the specialized weapon tier, the Cadian's standard pairing, grenade launcher for flexibility and plasma gun for armored kills. Cadian gunners don't fire plasma just for big damage. They fire in rhythm. Frontline pins, second line opens the window, and plasma delivers the full stop, as quick and precise as punctuation. Against close-range armor, melta-guns fire only when distance and angle are textbook perfect. For longer ranges, they call on autocannons or lascannons from the heavy weapons squad, typically set on elevated ground behind Cadian standard sandbags. Angled just right, shoulder height, with a firing slit wide enough for a last-pack reload. Essential to all of this is the Vox, the heartbeat of command rhythm. Cadians use ultra-short commands, each encapsulating an entire procedure. Anchor, hold the line, establish pivot, bleed, drain. Conserve fire while sustaining pressure. Scour, clear, flush out blind zones. A skilled platoon leader doesn't shout, he sets tempo like a conductor. When Vox interference hits, Cadians switch to hand signals and synchronized watches. Each target receives a time window, measured in breaths. What looks like instinct is in fact process drilled until it becomes reflex. Mobility is what elevates Cadians above other regiments. They don't just hold lines, they reshape them. When the enemy focuses pressure on a ridge, a Cadian platoon immediately forms a hinge. One squad anchors, drawing fire, while the other 2 slide laterally to reweave the fire net at a new angle. The entire maneuver happens within 2 to 3 Vox beats. These fluid formations are supported by Chimera APCs for rapid pivoting and Sentinel Walkers for maintaining line of sight in forests and ruins. Further out, artillery delivers the Cadian punch in reserve. Basilisks and manticores don't fire indiscriminately. They follow rhythm maps updated by Vox scout teams. When the infantry calls bleed 2, artillery knows. Add pressure, but don't close. When the command seal comes through, it means lock the gate. A barrage cuts off retreat and crushes the counterattack. By embedding this language of rhythm into every layer of fire support, the Cadian formation operates like a symphonic war machine. Each instrument simple, but together they play a devastating harmony. Cadian equipment isn't flashy, but it works. Their standard flak armor is field modified with simple time-tested tricks. A fiber lining at the shoulder to absorb recoil during rapid volleys, wrist padding for blind reloads in smoke and dust, and a thin plastic card tucked inside the helmet to record local cipher codes during long deployments. The Kasrkin, Cadia's elite, wear sealed armor, wield stabilized plasma weapons, and serve as the regiment's surgical scalpel, unleashed on critical points. Ammo bunkers, enemy Vox stations, or urban bridgeheads. Urban warfare, a nightmare for most regiments, is where Cadians shine, thanks to their corner floor corridor discipline. They split into cross pairs. One pair holds the corridor while the other climbs floors, switching rhythm every 30 to 45 seconds to avoid fatigue. Mortar teams in the rear fire fragmentation shells along pre-marked grids, tagged with luminescent paint. Before every corner, the NCO calls Scour 3. Clear the angle in 3 beats. Toss flash, sweep low, sweep high, then roll in like flowing water, leaving no gap for the enemy to regain rhythm. Outside the cities, on mud flats or ash dunes, Cadians follow a damage ladder. Start with lasgun pinfire, escalate to autocannons when enemies bunch up, call basilisk strikes when they form lines, and only use meltas or assaults when the enemy rhythm breaks. The ladder isn't rigid. NCOs can skip rungs if they spot a silence window, that brief moment when the enemy tries to shout an order but hasn't yet. That little margin of freedom is what lets Cadians innovate within discipline. Cadian legends abound. One platoon held a stone bridge for 3 days under constant shelling, syncing their volleys with thunderclaps to mask the sound of maneuvering teams. Another squad, Vox blind, during a magnetic storm, kept firing in perfect rhythm by wristwatch until artillery heard their tempo and adjusted barrages accordingly. Many tales are embellished, but the core remains unchanged. Keep rhythm, live. Lose rhythm, die. Spiritually, Cadians don't survive on hollow slogans. They're taught one lesson, the most Cadian of all, 1 more minute. When the line breaks, 1 more minute for artillery to lock in. When ammo runs dry, 1 more minute for supply to crawl through. When toxic fog spreads, 1 more minute for the Kasrkin to cut off the serpent's head. That 1 minute becomes law. Add enough of them together, and you get victory. And that's why the Cadians became the standard by which all other infantry regiments are measured. They don't rely on superior tech or genetic enhancement. They rely on people plus rhythm discipline, a combination so ordinary it's terrifying because there's nothing to fail. You can throw daemons, super heavy tanks, or warp storms at them. But if the Cadians keep their rhythm, the line holds. And when the smoke clears, what remains are chipped flak helmets, empty last packs, and a trench line. Still exactly where it was. In the universe of Warhammer 40k, where towering legends overshadow humanity, the Cadian Shock Troopers remind us of a simple truth. The extraordinary is built from the ordinary. Done right, done consistently, done to the very end. They are not immortal. They fall more often than anyone else. But every 1 more minute they hold the line has stitched together countless dawns for worlds that will never know their names. If there's anything truly terrifying about the Cadians, it's not their firepower. It's their refusal to fall out of rhythm. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing to follow more journeys across the 40k universe, where every platoon, every emblem, has its own rhythm worth hearing. And before you leave, try answering one question. What is your own 1 more minute?